Our girl is destitute.
What conspiracy theory do you have?
You're the Feyre.
I'm Feyre. He hates Tamlin. He's also a bit of a petty bitch.
And yet, she decides, let me just shoot my shot and see it. I'm like, girl. Hi.
Hi.
God.
So nervous and awkward. Okay. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Oh my God, we're here.
We're here. It's happening.
It's happening. Hi, guys.
Weird baby idea that you had is now coming to life.
Wild.
Yeah, I need everyone to know that she created a PowerPoint presentation to entice me into doing this with her.
We haven't even introduced ourselves.
Oh yeah, so hi. My name's Corryn.
My name is Ariel, and welcome to Cauldron Save Us, an ACOTAR podcast.
Cauldron Save Us. Which,
Woo!
if you have read the series, enjoy the giggle we just gave you. If you have not, the title
You'll get it
will
later.
soon become very clear to you.
Exactly. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Well, we love ACOTAR, obviously. That's why we're here. We
That's
love
why we're here.
ACOTAR. We love Sarah J. Maas and the beautiful universe that she has created for us. This we will be specifically talking about ACOTAR, which, if you don't know, probably do if you're here, stands for A Court of Thorns and Roses. We'll probably go into at times some of her other series like Throne of Glass and Crescent City, but this is ACOTAR.
Specifically, ACOTAR, sort of a read along kind of process.
Of our favorite Fae smut book.
Of our favorite
books.
Fae smut books that are so much more.
So much more. No, truly, like, and I think that's one of the big reasons why I'm so excited to do this podcast with you is like, I think a lot of people get into ACOTAR being like, I want some smutty fantasy, which,
Yeah.
like, understandably, of
Power
course.
to you. Get it.
My God. But, like,
Full support.
Full support. But once you, like, get into it, you're like, oh,
Mm.
this is, like, way more. And then you get to the smutty parts and you're like,
Yes.
this is very smutty. And then you get to the rest of it and you're like, wow, I'm crying. This is a journey. Like,
My life has changed forever. Yeah.
I feel that's a good segue into, like, how we got into ACOTAR. Do you want to talk about how you got into it?
Yeah. It was really funny when I was like prepping for this, like, how did you get into ACOTAR portion that I knew we wanted to do for this? I had to go back to on my Kindle, right, to see like when did I first purchase the first one, right? So I read the first one in February of 2022.
Damn.
Yeah. Which this came out,
I want to say 2015.
yeah, 2015 was when the first one came out. So a smidge behind. And what's really wild is it's like a fun little, I guess, insight into my life is I had just run my first and only at this point marathon. So I just finished a year of training, and I think my brain was just like, I need something new. Like, it's a very bizarre experience to train so hard for something and then suddenly it's over. And I just was experiencing this very bizarre, like, mental depression. I was also going through like a pretty rough time personally. And I just remember ACOTAR was like, it was all over on socials. It was all over, and I've always been a big fantasy person. And so I was like, hey, screw it. Let's just read some funny, like, everyone's talking about like how dirty it is. Like, let's do it, and then proceeded to rail through the series. It took me 2 months to read the whole series. Although I guess actually compared to you who did it in like a fucking week or some shit.
No, it took me 2 months for the whole series.
Okay,
Maybe
yeah.
a little bit over.
Yeah, railed pretty hard into the series, and I couldn't believe how much it touched on personal things for me, the growth of the characters. Like, very quickly you're like, oh, this is so much more than just, like, really good sex scenes. Like, this is so much more than that, which actually really, like, amplifies the sex scenes because you're so in it with the characters and you're so in it in some of these portions that you're just like, the passion and the actions and all the things are just they mean a lot more to you, and not to, like, spoil anything for people, but the final book came to me at a time basically, my issues with alcohol really came to a head, and I had some stuff go down in my life that forced me to, become sober, and when I started reading and literally right after I made that decision, I started reading, A Court of Silver Flames, which if you had read the series, you're gonna you probably have, like, little chills going down your spine right now just because, like, the timing of that is insane. If you haven't read the series, just know this series will have things that happen that will impact you in ways that you do not expect it, but as Ariel and I have learned together, it comes at you at the time when you need it. Um, and it literally helped me get through. I then proceeded to read that book 3 more times in a row, and it is a big source of why I was successful my first year of sobriety, besides all my wonderful friends and family and what have you, but, like, that was personal work for me. So, yeah, just really fell in love, and then I went pretty hard. I did Throne of Glass immediately afterwards, and then did Crescent City, and then about a year and a half later, my other really good friend, D, started, like all of a sudden, she, like, disappeared from texting for a little bit and was like I was like, "Hey, what have you been up to?" And she's like, "Oh, I started reading this series called ACOTAR, like, have you heard of it?" And I was like, "Girl." And I hadn't realized that I had kept it to myself, like, my obsession. So then I proceeded to reread it again with her, but that was after I'd already read the series. Let's just say I'm on my 4th reread right now. And then
So basically how I got into it was through Corinne.
Mhm.
Corinne and I, we've been friends for going on 13 years this year, which is wild to think. But we've lived apart for probably like half of that, I want to say. I live in LA, Corinne lives in San Francisco. There was a period of time I was living in New York and she was in San Francisco. And so we get to talk, but like usually it's like we'll go like a month or two of like little bits of texting and then have like 6-hour Zoom sessions of like catching up on like everything in our lives.
she's not exaggerating, by the way. They are legitly 6-hour Zoom sessions where we have to call it. We have to be like, I need to go."
Yeah. Like I'd say 6 hours is like the average. There are times it's
Average,
longer, times it's shorter, usually around 6 hours.
usually.
So this was like back in October of 2024. So
Mhm.
last year. And I think I don't entirely remember how it came up. I think I was telling you about my other obsession, which is Taylor Swift's music. I love Taylor Swift. And somehow that led into like a discussion about ACOTAR, and I don't quite remember how.
Yeah. Well, but it was, like, one of the first times that we realized we started talking a lot more frequently for some reason last year. I just think, like, we were being better about, like, talking a lot more, and it was one of the first times that Ariel and I realized that we actually didn't have to do the, like, catch up thing where we're like, "Here's all the things that have been going on in my life since, like, the 3 months since we've talked." I think it'd only been, like, 2 or 3 weeks since the last time we had talked, and so we actually got that beautiful opportunity to just be like, "What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you la 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 la?" And I think that's how it came out of, like I was like, "Wait a minute, like, what do you like, I know you like to read, like, scary stuff, but, like, have you done this?" And then we kinda started talking about it.
You know what it was? It was, I'm pretty sure I was talking about Taylor Swift and I mentioned her song "So It Goes," which, if you know Kurt Vonnegut, that's a line from my favorite book of all time, Slaughterhouse-Five. You started talking about Kurt Vonnegut, and then we got into just a discussion about reading, and you brought up ACOTAR. That's how it was. And I'd heard of it, and I was like, okay, that's that fairy smut book, right? That I've seen. Like, I remember like back when I lived in New York, seeing people on the subway reading it, like that kind of thing. But I never really knew what it was about until you explained it. I was like, "You know what? This sounds really cool." I was going through a really rough patch in my life, still am, honestly. And I was like, I am trying to get more into audiobooks while I like take a shower at night, like get ready, all that. I'm gonna try just like listening to this as an audiobook. I'm like a huge podcast person, love podcasts, but I really want to try and do more books. I started the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I think I listened to like 7 chapters in the first day, which is so funny because like if you've read the whole series, like I think it's kind of a consensus that A Court of Thorns and Roses is like one of the least favorite amongst the series. Like most people like, and it's great. Like that is not a diss at all to it. But once you especially get to Mist and Fury, the second book, there's particular reasons why Thorns and Roses is not a favorite amongst fans for the most part. And so to get through 7 chapters, like rereading the first few right now, I'm like, wow, I really got through a lot that first day. And I just couldn't stop. Like I could not stop. I think I read the first book in like a week. Um and just like sped through it and kind of like Corinne as I got through the books, just weird stuff was mirroring my own life, and it
Mhm.
was really helping me cope with, like, a lot that I was going through, and
Mhm.
it still is because, so after I finished Thorns and Roses, I, ACOTAR, the whole series, I went to Corinne, and I was like, "Okay, I know she has 2 other series." I'm, like, fully in the SJM cult, as we call it.
Yep, welcome.
Uh, welcome. And I was like, "What do I read next? Do I read Throne of Glass or do I read Crescent City?" And I remember you had like a whole
Oh,
like I think you talked to D about this.
yeah, it was a struggle, man, because I was very like, "How what is the best way to do this?" And it's so hard because it's so subjective, it's so personal, it's so, like, what your process is. But there were some things about Crescent City that I was very afraid were going to be spoiled for my
And they
dear
were,
baby girl. I
unfortunately.
still can't talk about it.
Here's a tip for everyone if
Social
you're
media,
reading
stay on
Crescent
social media.
City. If you read Crescent City, literally do not Google anything about it. Like I
Don't.
literally Googled just how to spell someone's name in it
Yeah,
because I've only listened to the audiobooks. Googled someone's name and it spoiled something immediately.
ugh,
So just don't Google
furious.
anything about the books while you're reading. But I think the way we decided was I asked you which series do you think I'll like better, Throne of Glass or Crescent City? And you said Throne of Glass.
Throne of
And
Glass.
so I said, okay, well, I'm going to read Crescent City first, then, so that way I'm not disappointed
Right.
after reading Throne of Glass, which like now having read Crescent City, I'm like, I could never like it's so good. It's so we're honestly talking about getting Crescent City tattoos together. Like
Yep.
that's how much that's how good it is.
Yeah.
So I read Crescent City, power through it, love it. And now I'm in the middle of Throne of Glass, which
Yep.
I'm adoring, like
Mhm.
power through it as well. I'm currently on Queen of Shadow. I think I'm like halfway through already. Like, and I started
Yeah.
just the other day. It's so good. Um, yeah, and so that's kind of been my ACOTAR slash Massverse journey.
Mhm.
And at a certain point, I just realized, you and I, we love these books so much. Like
Mhm.
we've been like best friends for almost 13
Yeah.
years now.
Yeah.
But like I feel like it took us our friendship to a new level. And I was like, well, we
Totally.
already talk about these books so much. Let's just like share it with everyone, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how this podcast came to be. I did make a PowerPoint for
You
Corinne.
did.
It was very silly. We'll talk about that at another
Which
point.
is like, if anyone knows Ariel, it's like unbelievably on brand for her to make a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Like, I also I wish I had screenshot like every single slide. They're so good. Also, Ariel made a Taylor Swift playlist
Yeah.
for every single ACOTAR book.
Yep. So,
Um,
because
no one
you
asked her
wanted
to
to
do
get
this.
okay, to be fair, you told me you were trying to get into Taylor Swift.
Yes, okay, that is fair. That is fair.
I was like, this is a way to bridge both our loves.
They're actually pretty incredible. They're
Thank
they're they're
you.
pretty incredible. So, like, one thing that I think you will all learn about Ariel is that when she decides to do something, she fucking does it, man. Hard. Full send.
I mean, that's kinda how we became friends, if you think about it.
Yeah, should we
Like
should we do a
yeah,
brief
so
story?
we're both in film. I write and direct, Corinne does sound, and we met in film school at San Francisco State University.
Mhm.
I'm sure we'll talk about the full fleshed out story, but Corinne is truly one of my closest collaborators. Like, other than my husband David, who I'm sure you will hear a lot about, like he's
And we
also in
love
film, he's an
David.
editor.
David is the
We
best
love
boy.
best boy David is the best boy.
Yep.
Corinne, like everything I do, if I can get Corinne on it, like
It's purely selfish. I've been telling Ariel for years that I'll be riding her coattails for a very long time because the shit that she writes and directs will make you uncomfortable in the most important way. 13 years of friendship, still shocked to this day how incredible her willpower, her self-motivation, your love for what you want to do and what you want to give to the world is like absolutely incredible. So I will be writing her coattails to the day that I fucking die because her projects people need to see, they need to watch, they need to be a part of because they're important. She's gonna help change the horror genre. I'm gonna say it right now. Ariel and our biggest goals is always to make people as uncomfortable as possible. This podcast, I think we want probably the exact opposite.
although I will say, I think that is kind of why I'm drawn to Sarah J. Maas's books. Is like
Ooh,
I mean, she doesn't she doesn't make people uncomfortable in the way that like I strive to.
yeah,
I think she more does the loving embrace of like we're gonna talk about uncomfortable
this,
things
yeah,
like in
yeah,
history and politics because all of her books are reflections of those things, right? Like she
100%.
talks about slavery
Yep,
in pretty much all of her books. She talks about
yeah,
corruption
yep,
and how politics and money and things like
yep.
that are corrupt. But instead of like me, where I'm like, I'm gonna show you the most graphic, fucked up
Well, no,
shit.
you're
She's
you're
like,
gonna curb stomp people with it.
that's the perfect description. I'm gonna curb stomp you with it. She goes, I'm gonna like embrace you and I'm gonna give you something that turns you on, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna embrace you. I'm gonna make you feel very confused. I might slap you around a little bit, but
Might
but
have a
it's
blowjob scene
but
in
it's
an
gonna
inappropriate setting.
it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be
Yeah,
just
it's
fine.
gonna be fine.
It's gonna be just fine.
I feel like that is the perfect segue into what this podcast is. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through all 5 ACOTAR books chapter by chapter. Um the chapters that we cover are going to just vary, depending on the week. We're kind of doing this organically, like where we're going through each chapter and going, okay, these chapters fit together with these chapters. So sometimes there'll be more chapters than other weeks. Sometimes it'll be less. This week we're covering chapters 1 through 3 of the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses. So obviously we're starting from the beginning. Yes, our lovely, lovely, lovely copies.
First time I've ever read
Um,
it in the physical form because
same.
I've been a Kindle girly.
First time I've read read with my eyes. Seeing the names is wild,
Not just her
honestly.
ear holes. Oh yeah,
No,
side note, it's been a real fun time. Ariel knows how to pronounce everything and I know how to spell everything.
exactly. I know, seeing like, especially like the common sounding, like Alice, for
Yeah.
example, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
ALIS. All right.
Yeah.
So the other thing you guys need to know is we're doing something I think a little unique with this podcast. So the first half of the podcast, we're not going to have any spoilers. So that way, anyone who's reading along with the books has never read them before, you will not have anything spoiled for you. The only things we're going to talk about is those chapters we're talking about that week and anything that came before it,
Yep.
because obviously you'll have read it before. Second half is the spoiler section.
Yeah.
For those of us who have read all the books, sometimes maybe even
The
other
whole
SJM
series,
books.
yeah, the whole verse. We're still figuring out how far
Yes.
deep we're gonna go into some of that, but
Yeah, definitely. At the very least, we will be talking about stuff all the way through Silver Flames.
yep.
So going with caution if you haven't read them all, but if you've read them all, you're good. Hey everyone, Ariel here with a quick little note. When we first filmed this, Corinne and I planned to have both the non-spoiler and the spoiler sections of the podcast all in one episode. Once we got to editing, we realized that we gab a lot. So, to make everything easier on everyone, we decided to split the non-spoiler and the spoiler parts of the pod into 2 separate episodes. The episode you're on right now is the non-spoiler portion, and you can already find this week's spoiler section in your podcast feed. We'll be doing this every week from here on out, so both episodes will be coming out at the same time. All right, back to your regularly scheduled programming. Other than that, just know we are ladies who have mouths like truckers,
Which
so
you've
we will
already
be
heard.
swearing.
It's already
I've
happened
already heard.
quite a few
Yes.
times.
I feel like that shouldn't be surprising to anyone who reads Sarah J. Maas's books.
No.
Maybe ACOTAR, there's not a ton of swearing until Silver Flames has some swearing,
Yes.
but Crescent City and Throne of Glass has some. So just know that that's not anything that's ever going to change about us. We truly can't help it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. You're welcome and we're sorry.
Yeah.
We've realized is the tagline of this series or this podcast, honestly, is you'll be hearing that a lot from us.
Yep.
And then the other thing, and this is something that will definitely never change. This podcast is a safe space for anyone who is LGBTQ plus, BIPOC, disabled, chronic illness, the whole gamut.
Say it
If
with your
you
chest.
Exactly. If
Yep.
you belong to any of those communities, like you are our people, we love you, we are here for you. We're recording this on January 22nd of 2025. I'm sure you can probably
Yep.
tell we're not happy about the inauguration that just went down on Monday. So you're our people. If you don't like that, you don't have to listen.
Yeah.
So, um, also, what are you doing reading
Yeah.
Sarah J. Maas
Yeah.
books?
Honestly,
Like,
I actually saw a meme today that literally, I think I sent it to you. That was literally just like, if you're a fan of these books and like A Corner Thorn of Roses was in it, and it said, and you voted for the orange guy, you
yeah,
missed, you missed the
the
point.
point. Yeah, I mean, she has queer characters in every book, all of her series. She has people of color
I mean,
in
there's
it,
marginalized
like
characters in every single one of her books.
everyone.
Um,
So,
if that is not a space that you are comfortable in, you should leave now.
yeah,
Because
we ain't changing.
no,
In fact, I think if anything, we're just gonna
get
get
worse.
more. We're gonna get worse and more supportive of everyone who the Orange Man is against. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's gonna get worse, and it's gonna get more queer as we go along. So
oh yeah,
just
yeah,
get ready. Buckle up.
yes. Buckle up, Buttercup. That being said, shall we dive into it? So, we're gonna go over chapters 1 through 3. This is the non-spoiler section, so if you're first reading these books, you're in good company. We're not going to spoil anything beyond, and we'll give you ample warning when we move on to the spoiler section. So we first start off with our girl Feyre in the woods as she's hunting.
Dude, it's brutal,
Yeah,
man. Like, it is brutal. Like, she talks about her ribs. She
yeah.
talks about just how like, just how fucking hungry she is.
My first note was our girl is destitute. Like
I literally
she
have she
is.
is desperate.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I mean, yeah, like you said, she's described as like you could count a good number of her
Yeah.
ribs. She was gangly by this time of year. Like she is starving. Things are not going well. Which again, it just like plays to like how destitute this family is. And specifically Feyre. So like in chapter 1, we're just with Feyre in the woods, right? And we're getting a lot of establishment of not just who she is, but this world that we're in, which, obviously is typical for any book, specifically fantasy books. Um, you know, we get a little bit, we start going more into chapter 2 with this, but we start understanding that there are kind of these two different worlds, right? There's the human world where Feyre's in. We know she's a human. And then there's Prithian, which is the Fey world, the fairy world. I also forgot how much they say the word fairies versus fae
Yeah.
in the beginning, which was really interesting. I'm probably going to keep saying fae because I'm so used to it, but just know fairies and fae are the same thing. There's different types that you'll find out about later, but mainly we're dealing with high fae. And that the fae are the bad guys, basically. I mean, she says like these accounts of Fae, once rare enough to be dismissed by the village elders as hearsay, had in recent months become commonplace whisperings on the everyday market, on
That's
every market day.
Oh my god, I
So
love you so much. That's one of the ones that I underlined as well. That's so
highlight
funny.
it.
Well, because I enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting because at the beginning of that paragraph, she says, "Our long forgotten gods," which
Yes.
I highlighted as well because I was like, that's really I think I think Mother Mass, as we call her, I
Yes.
think she did a really good job in this book of not doing the classic fantasy dump where you literally spend 300 or what, 100 some odd pages wrapping your head around the history of this like specific place. I think she does a really good job of like peppering in these little pieces of like our long forgotten gods, and then the like, the sentence that Ariel just read, and like just like really slowly bringing you into this world.
My screenwriter brain immediately came on, and like a big rule, if you don't know, in screenwriting is show don't tell, which the cool thing about books is you can tell, right? Like you're usually in the character's head to some degree, especially when it's a first person narrative like ACOTAR is. We're literally in Feyre's head, and she still didn't do the info dump, which I
Yeah,
loved. Like it was not like, obviously there's an element of expository stuff that you have to have, but she really does the thing of like giving you the medicine with a spoonful of sugar, right?
totally.
It's we're getting that dump as she's like hunting, for example.
Rereading this, especially this first chapter, honestly, for me, was just this moment of like, this is a woman who she lives in this world. Like, this is a woman who, like, breathes this world, this creation, and, like, it almost feels like she doesn't have to plan it anymore. She just sort of writes and just
Yeah.
goes, because I just feel like she just knows, she knows this world, she knows these people. Because, like, even the simple, like, this destitute, starving girl who is having issue, who has, like, a semi-worthless family. But hey, in the on the second or third page, I'm gonna pepper in that she's an artist and that she has an
Yeah.
artistic mind, and that even when she's starving and freezing in the snow, she can't help but notice the beautiful snowflakes falling. And, like, she says she has this whole beautiful paragraph after that that is talking about how it used to be second nature for her to appreciate, like, the color of the grass, the color of a brooch, the color, like, how fascinating to for that it is clearly important to her that we know this about this character. And then right after that, we go into this thing of how her dream is to live in a quiet house with her dad with enough food and paint that that's all she needs to do for the rest of her life. Like, this to me, so many signs of a person living an awful life because all they want is enough food. Like, this is severe poverty. This is severe destitute, as you've already said. But she has this artistic brain that she can't turn off, which, like, many of you other artists out there, you know how that feels when you are in this space of it's actually not like financially responsible for me to think about my like artistic side right now because I have to do X, Y, and Z. But then you turn the corner, and like for me, it's like I'll turn the corner and I'll hear like the coolest creak from a door in the world, and it distracts the fuck out of me. Or like for you, it's like you'll see some story and you'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
like you can't turn it off. And so I just
No.
think this was such a cool little boop to be like, this girl, this hunter is an artist, and
Yes.
it's in her bones. She can't turn it off.
Well, and like what I love, there's two things I love about that. The first is, and I feel like if you're in screenwriting, possibly like other types of writing as well, like you'll know this term. It's such good narrative economy, right? Because
Mm,
not only are you establishing the inner world of this character, but also the outer world of you're getting across in a very quick section of text. She used to have money, because if she were always living in poverty, she would have never she would have never painted, right? Like
100%,
she wouldn't
100%.
have
She
had the
wouldn't have had the
time.
time.
Exactly. And so it's a wonderful kind of killing two birds with one stone moment.
Yeah.
The other reason I love it is in every one of Sarah J. Maas's series, all of her heroines are artists in some
Mm,
way. So,
in some way.
with obviously ACOTAR, Feyre is a painter. in Crescent City, Bryce is a dancer, and in Throne of Glass, Selena she does music.
Mhm.
And so it makes me go, as a writer myself, I'm like, oh, this feels like the author putting a little bit of themselves
Yeah.
in her own
Yeah.
story. And I love that. I always
Totally.
love seeing what writers bring of themselves into their work.
Totally.
So that was really, really fun. And then yeah, it just gives her this really rich inner world that we obviously see later in the series, but it's cool. I didn't realize until because this is my first reread of the series. Like
Right.
they establish her as a painter in chapter 1, which is
Yeah.
so rad.
It's literally
Like
page
two,
3.
yeah, I was gonna say 2 or 3,
Like,
and then it's immediately juxtaposed by her being a hunter, and
yeah.
we get this wolf, right?
Yeah.
Which this is where, and I say this with so much love, I have my first bone to pick with Feyre, and I'm gonna read you a quote. So she says, I was a decent shot, but I never faced a wolf. I didn't know where to hit or how fast they moved. I couldn't afford to miss, not when I had only one ash arrow. And at this point, we've established that she thinks there's a possibility that this wolf isn't a wolf. It could be a fairy, right? A fae, which at this point they've been established as very deadly, right? And she only has one ash arrow, which we know at this point, ash is the only thing that can kill Fae. Iron keeps them away, supposedly, but ash kills them. And she only has one ash arrow. And she is the sole provider for her family, right?
Yeah.
Like, they will starve to death
Yes.
if she's not around.
Yeah.
And yet, she decides, hey, I've never hunted a wolf before. And on top of that, this wolf might be a Fae. Let me just shoot my shot and see. And I'm like, girl, like, what?
Oh my god, I have never thought about that aspect before. That she's just like,
Wild.
fuck it. Well, I mean, honestly though, I actually think it shows this really awful fine line
Yeah.
between wanting to provide and
Yeah.
then also just like not giving a fuck about your well-being. Like
And the
knowing you're
state
the
of her
provide.
mind.
Exactly. Exactly. She's that desperate that it
Yeah.
doesn't cross. She's that desperate and she's that fucking hungry, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, because
let's
also,
let's just
yeah.
have a small moment about how any of us feel when
Yeah.
us privileged bitches don't get our like one meal, right?
Our little snack of the day.
Yeah,
Like,
like, oh my god, like how I mean, a word was created for just people not getting that like in the level of poverty and I mean, unfortunately, there actually are plenty of people who can probably relate to how this
yeah.
feels. So, but it's just that mental state of like you're not there's not a lot of common sense going on because you're
No.
super hungry. And but I mean, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about it in that way
Yeah.
before. I'm just like,
No, and
bitch, what the fuck are you doing?
I think that's why it's forgivable is like you remember immediately, like, oh, she is so
Mhm.
starved that she is
Mhm.
not thinking logically here. Because
Yeah.
remember, she doesn't shoot the wolf to eat it. She doesn't bring back the meat from the wolf. She's shooting the wolf so that the wolf doesn't eat the dough because she wants to eat the dough, right? So
Well,
like,
but also she wants the hide. She
and
takes
she
the
wants to hide.
hide.
Yes, she does want the hide.
Yeah.
But like it's such good writing of like this is the desperation, right? Of
Yeah.
this character. It's immediate. It's so the stakes are kind of as high as they can be in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, cuz like she literally says focus on surviving the week, the day, the hour.
Yes.
Like,
So good.
bro.
So, but I did have that little bone to pick of like, you do remember, right, that like if you die, your family dies. So
Yeah.
that was kind of funny to me. But obviously, she shoots the wolf. She
Mhm.
kills it. We kind of get a sense that it could be a fae because
The
she hits it
size
she's
and
in the side. Well, yeah, the size, but she hits the wolf
oh
in
right.
its side, not through its eyes, and it
Yep.
immediately reacts. Like, and she even says, like, a wolf this big shouldn't be reacting that way if it was
Yeah.
just hitting the side. So
Yeah.
we get a hint that maybe she was right, but we don't find out yet. First, we go home in chapter 2 and we meet the family.
Yeah, one of the things in chapter 1, we learn she's not a virgin. I just think it's really interesting with our main character in the first I keep wanting to say episode. It's so funny. In the first chapter, we know she's not a virgin. And
Yeah.
that's a pretty big deal for these style of fantasy books.
Yes. Chapter 2, we now get introduced to Feyre's family, and her family is made up of 3 people: her father and her 2 sisters who are older, Nesta, who's the eldest, and Elaine, who is the second eldest. So establishes Feyre as the baby. I believe they say she's 19 in this chapter. I think we get an age at some point. Um, I just love the descriptions of her family. We'll get more into it in the spoilers because I have a lot of thoughts, particularly on Elaine. But my favorite is, and I quote, Elaine sometimes just didn't grasp things.
Yeah, oh my god.
I
Yeah,
died.
I underlined that too because it was so good. Because I love the lead up to that too,
Yeah.
of just like it wasn't that Elaine was cruel. She wasn't like Nesta who'd been born with a sneer on her face.
Yes.
Elaine sometimes just didn't grasp things.
And I think what I love, and I will say, maybe upon a first read, you might think, oh, she's not the sharpest tool in the shed, but like I do want to say Elaine is very smart. Like she's a smart woman. She understands the world she's in, the people in it. It's she's I think Elaine just lives a little bit on a different planet sometimes, and I get it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think the follow because there's literally a sentence, like a couple sentences after what I just read that is like Feyre being like, I'd never been able to decide whether she actually didn't understand that we were truly poor or if she just refused to accept it.
Which I think is really relatable in a lot of ways.
Yes,
I think
100%.
you know, she would have been, because Elaine's supposed to be, I believe, 20. She's like only a year older, I think, than Feyre. So she would have been
Mhm.
about 10, no, 12 when they went into
Yeah,
poverty. That's a
yeah.
pretty, even though, Feyre is only a year or so younger, like, I feel 12 and 13 is the age when, like, you're becoming like a full person, you know?
Yeah.
So it makes sense why she would dissociate. At the same time, I think, her, for instance, her gardening gets mentioned, and that becomes like a pretty
Mhm.
big character trait of Elaine, is she's a gardener.
Mhm.
I can't take credit for this. I think I saw on the ACOTAR subreddit, but someone pointed out, like, for all the gardening Elaine does, she plants flowers. Could she not have planted some vegetables at a certain point to help her family
Yeah.
survive? And I think that's where
Yeah.
I start to have a little bit of an issue with Elaine in terms of her spaciness
Yeah.
of like, I get you don't want to accept this, but like you not accepting this could actually be at the detriment of your family at times, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and I'm not like I love Elaine just as much as everyone else does, but like I get a little frustrated with her at times.
No, well, these first couple chapters, like they do not paint the family in a good way at all. And so if we're thinking about just these first 3 chapters, these sisters are not, I mean, like, yes, you do end up finding out that like Elaine did buy her some paint and it's what she actually oops, sorry. It's how she actually ends up like adorning certain things in the house, and she like does these cute little paintings like here and there, and to bring some joy. And so like I think Elaine, to me, it feels very classic middle sister syndrome where um I have 2 older sisters, so I'm the baby of
You're
3.
the Feyre.
I'm the Feyre. We'll talk about that later. Um, but and not that this really like I'm not saying that this is that I'm like using my family as like an example of why whatever, but it's, having observed the dynamics between 3 sisters, when you are younger, everyone wants to be like the older sister, the eldest one, right? Everyone kind of follows that lead. And just because they're older, right? When we're kids, we have such this fascination with people who are older and like we want to be like them and like blah blah blah. And for me, it just feels very like Elaine got swept up in Nesta's kind of like world. also you brought up a good point of like how old Elaine was when they lose money, of how Elaine was just on that cusp of, because also we learn about the mother, and like
Yeah.
we learned that like this family, they weren't just like they weren't just like doing okay. Like they were wealthy. They were part of like high society, because it was like there's discussions of how the mom was really big on parties and really big on like all this kind of stuff, and how like it's their social graces were the really big important things, and like their manners and all this stuff. And even they talk like Nesta in this one, she talked like they talk about how like Nesta just looks down at all on all these people, even though they're one of these people now. And so they're Nesta and Elaine but Elaine, she was like just on the cusp of like really getting into that like social, that world of she's getting closer to an age of where people are going to start discussing marrying
Yeah.
ages and like all that kind of stuff. And so it it's almost like Nesta's in this or Elaine is in this really weird spot of like towing this line of remembering the world they came from and almost really being a part of it, and then it kind of getting taken away. And so I think that's why Elaine's in this very weird like middle ground, because she loves she, god damn it, she loves Feyre. She sees what Feyre is going through, but it never crosses her mind to help her.
Right.
Right? It never crosses her mind to, but she does like, there's still love and affection for Feyre. While then Nesta, on the other hand, has like full bore, like
Disassociated.
she is angry and she's bitter because this particular world that kind of sounds like her mom was really training her for, because they say how like Nesta seems to be like her mother's favorite, got completely pulled the rug out from under her. Her dad isn't fucking doing anything. And now her little sister is just gonna like be a hunter. Like Nesta's very like, okay, what the fuck are we doing? And her bitterness and all of it has completely taken over her, to where I don't even really feel like she's thinking like an eldest sister anymore.
No.
Like I really feel like she's so angry at everything. And Elaine kind of seems to be the only thing that is keeping her from going like full monster mode,
Well, they even talk a little bit about why Nesta, and like, look, I'm
right?
just gonna say this right off the bat. I'm a huge Nesta defender. Not in this book, and actually for most of the books. But I have a special place in my heart for Nesta, and have kind of
Girl,
always.
I do too.
I know you do too.
Don't make you sound like you're alone.
Fair. No, no.
I'm just trying to stay focused on the book
Yes.
that we're on.
Well, and here's what I'll say. I think what I'm trying to say is like I've been a Nesta defender since the
Mm.
first book, cuz like
Right,
I
right.
know,
Sorry, I forgot about this.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I know eventually most people grow to love her.
Yeah.
But and this is kind of my biases, I think, is I am the eldest sister in my family.
Yeah.
I have a little sister. And I understand where, to a degree, I don't think Nesta does the best thing. In fact, I think she does a lot of shitty things, like,
Yeah.
allowing her youngest sister to go out and hunt
Right.
and almost die every day, right? Like,
Yeah.
and meanwhile, she can't even chop wood. Like, that's,
She can't even chop some fucking
yeah,
wood, bro. Oh
like,
my god, that little moment is so annoying. The entitlement, and then how she's just like, "But I need new boots. I need new blah 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 blah."
so
And you're
shitty.
like, "Bitch, look around you.
Yes.
Look around
So, like,
you."
there's no excuse for any of that whatsoever. I don't care, like, what your lot in life is. Like, that is shitty
Totally.
behavior. That's inexcusable.
Absolutely.
Where I do come to her defense a little bit from the beginning of the series is where all that comes from, which is the resentment towards her father. And they do talk about
Yeah.
that of like, because yes, as we talked about, like, their dad's knee was, he became disabled because of the debtors, right? They
Yeah.
ruined his knee. But they also talk about he doesn't have a disability that prevents him from working entirely, right? Like,
Yeah.
sure, he probably can't go become a farmer or a hunter or something like that.
But he could find a
Yeah, and we know he was a merchant, right? Like, he could there are jobs he could do that he just
Yeah.
chooses not to. And
Yeah.
that's where Nesta's resentment comes from. And that I think is what makes her empathetic, right? Is like
Totally.
she's standing there going, what the fuck? Like you're not
Yeah.
choosing your family. Instead,
Yeah.
you're choosing to just wallow in self pity and whittle your little wood carvings because you're too embarrassed. Because that's what it comes down to is he's embarrassed that he let his family down. So instead of accepting that,
Well, and also, like, mourning the loss of
yes,
his
that's
wife,
true.
who, like,
Yes.
clearly, because I feel like they kind of Feyre ends up saying it about how, like, the mom died
Yeah.
before they lost all of their
Yes.
money.
Yes. But
Yeah.
again, that means it's been at least more than 8
Probably almost a
years.
decade
Yeah.
for since she's been dead. Yeah.
And again, can empathize with the mourning, but when your family is starving, you know what I mean?
You still have 3 daughters.
Yes.
You still have shit to do.
Yeah.
Like, because she even says, like, in chapter 2, it's like, because she's kind of explaining Nesta, and she's like, "But at least Nesta didn't fill our heads with useless talk
Yep.
of regaining our wealth like my father."
Yes.
Like, it's a very simple statement, but it's very powerful in my
Yeah.
mind of, like, talking about how dangerous it can be to not be realistic of what your situation is.
And you know what this is making me realize is like each family member of Feyre's is paralyzed in their own thing.
Mm.
So with the dad is he's
Mm.
paralyzed in his own kind of self-pity, right?
Pride.
Pride. Nesta is paralyzed in her resentment towards her father, and
Mm.
Elaine is
Mm.
paralyzed in just kind of not accepting any of it, right? Like
Yeah.
she's like, "Nope, this is not really happening. I don't accept this," right? And instead
Yeah.
I'm going to dissociate by gardening. Whereas Feyre is the only one who fully accepts her reality for
Yeah.
what it is and
Yeah.
goes, I'm going to do something because no one else is. And I
Yeah.
think that is so fascinating and really sets her up for the character she becomes and grows
Yeah.
into of like changing so much about her world and the world in
Yeah.
general. So I
Yeah.
think like that really this chapter really establishes all of that. It
Yeah.
also it starts to establish the vow that Feyre made to her mom
Yep.
of, I
Mhm.
think it's in chapter 2, maybe it's chapter 3 where they fully talk about it of she makes a vow to her mother. Yeah, actually I think it's in chapter 3.
Yeah.
Um
Well, but even in chapter 2, she says, "But then again, my mother hadn't made them swear anything when they stood beside her deathbed."
yeah, so in chapter 2, Feyre brings up this deathbed vow that her mom makes kind of forces her to make when she's what, 12 years old. And the vow is stay together and look after them, which we'll get a little more into this in the spoiler section. It is a very vague vow, I will say. And I think Feyre takes it on. I think she adds her like own kind of interpretation to it of like, well, that means I need to like keep my family alive. But I can't blame her because again, she's like 12 when she makes this vow,
Yeah.
right? Like while watching her mother literally die, like
Yeah.
of course you're gonna take that on. So it's a hefty burden. Like this is a burden for Feyre. And while she maintains throughout the whole series that she loves her family, um, they're not really likable at this point in the series.
No, at this point, they're just, like, kinda it's so hard because it's like I have, like, a bunch of therapy speech
Yeah,
going on
yeah.
in my brain right now of just, like, these are all a bunch of extreme. I mean, I think the way that you just said it of, like, these are all people who are paralyzed by different things, I think is, like, a perfect way of describing this because it's just these are just blatant signs of humans who are just focusing their energy towards all the wrong fucking things.
Yes.
Like, Elaine is in fucking La La Land. Like, I actually wrote where I was like, is Elaine ignorant or willfully ignorant?
Yeah.
But their dad is willfully
Yep.
ignorant. Like, it's just you're dealing with these people who are not processing. And it also kind of sounds like it hasn't been this bad the entire time,
Right. Well, and they
right?
they say it
Like, it's
hasn't.
Yeah, they sound like it's there's kind of been this progression because she even I think in the first chapter or something like talks about how like, oh, I remember that summer where I did get to go around and paint everything or blah la la la, and we
Yeah.
haven't had that good of a summer since. Like I think this has been a very slow progression into like this severe of poverty,
Yeah.
right? Like we're kind of coming to them when they are at their utmost, like lowest
Yeah.
thing. Um, so yeah, I think like the family is just not. Ugh,
They're not.
they are just not they're not the ones, and
Yeah.
it's so fascinating because first chapter, we learn about the Fae a little bit, right? That they were these I think I've probably already said it like 3 or 4 times. For some reason, this phrase of like, just our long forgotten gods,
Yeah.
just like it's just, just it tells so much in that phrase of just like clearly like we idolize them for a section of time. And then actually in season, see what is happening? In chapter 3, we get a little bit of more of this too, but it's just like chapter 1, we really learn a lot that she's hungry and she's poor, but there's this other villain besides her hunger, and that where she is in the forest is like very close to where like these like fairies or these kind of really scary creatures. And so also a lot of fantasy books, like normally we love fairies from the beginning, like the fact that we're immediately introduced to fairies as these like really scary like things, and that the first chapter is really all about her battling her fear of her hunger and her fear of like the fairies or what else is in the forest. And then chapter 2 is kind of like, yeah, but her family's awful too. So there's sort of this like really weird like who are our villains here? Like, who are our bad guys? Who are our, and honestly, do we like this fair character right now? Like, she's kind of rough around the edges. Like, she's a little harsh, but also her family's pretty pathetic. Like, but yeah, I just think it's an interesting way to start this book of like presenting this world of like, I feel like almost in chapter 2, you almost like forget you're in a fantasy book
Yeah.
because you're so focused on this family dynamic. And like, yeah, it starts off with them talking about like, there's ward marks on the like they hired some charlatan to blah blah blah, but
Yeah.
like after that it really turns into this like family drama. And so
Yes.
it's just, I don't know, it's kind of interesting for a fantasy book.
Well, and what's cool also, and I think this is a good segue into chapter 3, is like
Mhm.
with each of the first 3 chapters, actually probably even subsequent chapters, the world expands a little bit more. So chapter 1, we're just with Feyre. Chapter 2, we expand to the family, and then chapter 3, we literally go into the village where we see other
Oh my
people
god.
and we learn more about what this beef between the humans and the Fae are. So first thing,
Oh my gosh, Ariel. That's when your little screenwriter brain just astounds me because you're so I guys. This is my fourth read. Fourth. And I've never noticed that before. I've never noticed that she does that.
yeah,
Holy shit. God, I love her so
this is the
much.
magic of Mother Mass. But yeah, so
Oh,
like
Mama Mass.
chapter 3, we go to the village, right? And immediately, it's Feyre and the sisters go to the village. We meet the children of the blessed,
Mm.
which
Mm.
I'm just gonna say, as someone
Mm.
I'm a huge true crime fan, and particularly I love anything about cults. Like the children of the Fae, or sorry, the children of the blessed feels so culty to me. Like it's giving oh my god, that cult up in Oregon. I'm forgetting the ashram. I'm forgetting their name, but or like almost like Manson family type vibes of
Yeah.
like, come join us. We worship these beautiful creatures. And like
Mhm.
immediately Nesta is like, nah, like this is not it. Like, get the fuck
It's
out
your
of my
first
face.
moment of, like, really loving Nesta,
No,
actually. I feel like
truly.
it's your first moment of, like, and it feels that classic family thing, right? Where you're like, "I cannot stand how you're acting right now, but I fucking love
Yeah.
you for this moment."
Her big
Like,
sister mode kicks in a lot
oh,
of
yeah,
ways. And
hard.
this is where we really begin to learn more. So
Yeah.
we get that there's a 500-year-old treaty. One thing I did want to talk about is, and we don't have to go super into it, but now having read most of Sarah J. Maas's books, she really does a lot of allegories towards real history and real politics. And I remember, I don't think it was until maybe it was with Thorns and Roses, but I know definitely by the time we got to Mist and Fury and definitely Wings and Ruin, I'm like, oh, she is referencing the American Civil War in these books, right? Like,
Mm.
because we do learn that the humans were slaves to the Fae.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the quotes that really stuck out to me in chapter 3 was, once long ago and for millennia before that, we'd been slaves to high Fae overlords. Once we had built them glorious, sprawling civilizations from our blood and sweat, built them temples for their feral gods. Once we had rebelled across every land and territory. The war had been so bloody, so destructive, that it took 6 mortal queens crafting the treaty for the slaughter to cease on both sides and for the wall to be constructed. The north of our world conceded to the high fae and fairies, who took their magic with them. The south, to we cowering mortals, forced forever to scratch out a living from the earth. So we get way more in depth. Like, this
It's
is
like
the
our first
conflict.
info dump.
Our first like real info dump of like,
Yeah.
this is the conflict, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
lasted this long. This treaty was made 500 years ago, but we're still feeling the effects of it, which, like, I feel frankly is a very relatable thing right now for us
Totally.
here in America, of like,
Yeah.
we're still feeling the effects of our civil war. Feyre and all the
Mhm.
humans are still feeling the effects of basically the civil war that happened with the Fae, right? And we
Mhm.
obviously learn way more about that through this book and in subsequent books, but it's this immediate grounding of,
Mm.
here's the central problem for this
Mm.
series, right?
Mhm.
And I think she does it in such a succinct way, and it makes sense where we're getting it. Like, we're meeting these humans who are defending the bad guys, basically, or who
Mhm.
we at this point perceive are the bad guys, right?
Mhm.
We also get that iron can kind of ward off Fae. We learn a little bit
Mhm.
of that in the first chapter when she talks about the ash
Mhm.
arrow, but we learn that people, Nesta and Elaine, they wear iron bracelets to keep away Fae. So we're getting the rules of this world in
Yep.
a nice little way. Uh,
Nice little
a
package.
nice little package. We also start learning more about like the dynamics of Feyre and her family within this human society. So this is where, I know you mentioned Feyre's.
Oh, so
Yeah.
okay, before we move on from Children
Yeah.
of the Blessed, like, really
Yeah.
fast, like, reading this again and, like, reading about Children of the Blessed, like, they finally make sense to me now.
Mm,
More in the sense of this isn't a spoiler for anything. It's just more it's like, I get it. Like, I can see I see why this cult is happening, right? It's sort of that whether you wanna start getting to some religious stuff or whatever, but it's sort of this idea of, like, there has to be something better than what's happening right now. And so this sort of natural evolution into, well, it's probably better over there, over on the wall. And maybe it was better we were their servants. Maybe it was better that we were like, there's actually some like historic, like, we're almost verging on like some Stockholm syndrome that's been passed down the ages, or verging into like, you know, some really gnarly stories of like past in America of like people being like, which is just wild. Like I think it's such an interesting like little thing for her to put in there, because it really does make sense that there would be this group that is just like, yeah, I know that we've been like told through, because even in chapter 3 we really start talking about like all the childhood stories, the nightmares you're told about the Fae, and all of these really awful images of them coming to steal. They were the boogeyman. They're the things you use to get your kids to like stay in line. Like, they were the monsters. And so you get a lot more of that in this chapter. And so, but I just think it just makes so much sense. Like, this would happen now.
it
In
is
fact, it
happening.
is.
It is happening. Well, when you brought up a better world, and I was looking for this quote, and I found it at the very end of chapter 2. Um, Papa Archeron is talking about, I think he's talking about Elaine. And he says, we need hope or we
Oh
cannot
yeah.
endure. So let her keep this hope, Farah. Let her imagine a better life, a better world, which is a
Yeah.
huge theme of this entire series, specifically the first book, of
Yeah.
imagining a better world, right?
Yeah.
For than what they have. And that is what the children of the blessed do.
Oh yeah.
I think one thing, and I'm so glad like you talked about that because I wanted to bring this up, is I was doing a little research just on Sarah J. Maas in general. I was reading her Wikipedia page, and I didn't know. So in college she majored in writing, but she minored in religion. And I think
Ah,
that context for all of her work is so important,
totally.
especially this one,
Totally.
because
Totally.
it's, again, she just has so much rich commentary on religion and faith and politics and
Absolutely.
how those two are interwoven together. And like you really see that in the ACOTAR series. Um,
Absolutely.
and actually, kind of like a nice little segue, you brought up earlier in the first chapter Feyre's virginity or lack thereof. And we really understand that in this chapter where we meet Isaac Hale very briefly. This is a guy she's been hooking up with for a couple of years, and they're not married by any means. In fact, she says he's gonna be married off soon to another woman, right? And she even mentions like she hadn't worked the courage up yet to say like, well, can we still hook up once you're married, right? Which
Right.
is like very, I'm like, oh my god, like that's very ballsy of her. I love this, and I think that's why I love
Yeah.
the series, and I love all of her books. Is like they're very sex positive, and even though it is hinted at, I would say that like virginity, there's, we talk later in the series about like they call, instead of it being called like a woman's hymen, it's your maidenhead, which I
Mhm.
think is so funny. So there is this construct of virginity obviously in this world, which makes sense, but it doesn't seem as like, this world doesn't seem as prudish, I guess, as you
Yeah.
would expect it to be. You know, Papa Archeron hears about from Nesta, she pokes fun in chapter 2 at Feyre for like hooking up with Isaac. And like, it's not like he gets out the switch and beats, Feyre for losing. He seems to kind of know already in a
He just
way.
he coughs because he's, like,
Yeah, it's
uncomfortable
like,
because, like, what parent wants to, like
right.
no matter how, like, liberal you are, what parent really wants to, like, hear about it,
Of
you know?
course. But he's not like,
Yeah.
oh my God, you're ruined, right? It's like, no, this seems to be a, if not common thing, at least a somewhat acceptable thing. Also, can I just say how jealous I am of this world that they live in the fact that they have male contraceptives, like,
Oh my
that
god.
aren't
I
just
know,
condoms.
dude.
I'm like,
I
why
know.
can't we get that? Like,
I
what?
know. I know. It's, like, one of my favorite things in this chapter too that she literally, like that because Nesta is all like, "I hope you guys are safe," or whatever, and because Feyre can't afford it, Isaac is the one who's been taking it, and I just, like it's such a casual like, I think this is one of the things that I think is also so fun about rereading Mama Mass's stuff is that it's like there are so many fun little nuggets like this that you totally just sort of you accept, you slide past. Sometimes it'll hit you 2 pages later where you're like, "Wait a
Yeah.
minute. What did I just read? Wait. You know?"
Yeah.
The other thing that I really enjoyed about the whole sort of like sex stuff between them is that it's Feyre
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
starts their liaison.
Yep.
She literally says, like, first of all, she does this beautiful thing where she talks about like the colors in his basket and
Yeah.
like when they first start
The
talking, right? When they
eggs.
first meet. So yeah, like, I'm sure, listener by now, right? Like you've already noticed all of these like really beautiful words used like for Feyre describing her color. Get used to it.
Yeah.
Um, so but then she was like, a simple, easy walk, perhaps a bit awkward, but he left me at my cottage feeling not quite so alone. A week later, I pulled him into that decrepit barn.
Yep.
I
Like,
love it so much.
and
I love it so
it sets
much.
her up so well. Like, Feyre
So
is
well.
I mean, all of Sarah J. Maas's heroines are just go-getters. Like, they're the ones who
100%.
initiate most of the
100%.
action, I would say,
Yeah.
which is what makes what happens in Thorns and Roses later interesting. Um,
So wild.
so wild. Yeah, and we'll get into that obviously later,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up because I didn't write that down, but it is something I loved.
Oh, it's so important.
Yeah,
It's so important. It is so, so,
so
so important that we know that she started, that it wasn't this thing that, she got coerced in and blah blah. Like it is very important, at least to me as a
yeah,
reader, and I know to you that we know she has agency of her body. We
yes,
know that she is making these choices. Because also honestly as a reader, when she then kind of talks to you like later kind of talks like it's not a very tender experience. They barely talk. And if they do, it's normally him bitching about something, which I also think is very
yeah,
funny. Um, But, like, she literally says it's like, every time was the same. It was a rush of shedding clothes, shared breasts and tongues and teeth. Like, it was not she even said that the lovemaking wasn't really particularly skilled. It was, like, just a release, like, because we know that she started this liaison, you're not sitting here picking apart these things like, "Oh my god. Oh my god, what's happening
Yeah.
to her?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're very, like, she knows what she's getting
Yeah.
into. We don't even have to worry about consent because she's starting it.
Yes.
Um, I mean, I guess there is a conversation to be had of, like, his consent, but she does make it seem that he is very into the whole process. They don't
Yes.
make it seem like she's having to force him or anything.
No.
So, I think it's so important. I mean, it goes alongside the reason why I brought up the fact that she tells us she's not a virgin in the very first
Yep.
chapter. These are all extremely important. Again, seems small, but it's fucking not, man.
No.
Like, it is a big deal that this woman, she's a woman
Mhm.
and she's making these choices of her body. And it's just,
It's
ha,
good
it's
establishing.
such a big deal.
Yes.
Exactly. It's good establishing. And as someone who has read some really fucked up fantasy books, like, uh, a woman with having this power over her body and making these choices, we don't see all the time. And, like, it's another reason, reason number 520 bajillion of, like, why I'll only really speak for the women right now, but why many women have been flocking and continuously staying with these books is that it's just like it is presenting a world that we want.
Yes. You brought up earlier, about how the cis straight men, there are cis straight men who read these books, usually because their partners like us make them. My husband David is currently reading ACOTAR and he's actually really liking it. And I think it's also important for them to be reading this type of a character,
Yeah.
right? Because it shows them this is like these women exist and here's how we can be allies to them, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that is why David loves those books, right? Is like that is he wants to see more female characters like that and see how the male characters in these books support those characters, right? And I mean, we definitely get more into
Well,
the
like, David would be in these books. Like, I'm sorry. I actually think we're both very fortunate in our partners and that I
yes.
actually think both of our men would succeed wonderfully
Oh
in
my
these
god.
books because it's just like the level of just like I think both of our partners are the type of men where, like, it's flabbergasting to them that um that a woman wouldn't that you would think a woman couldn't do X, Y, and Z. Like, it's
Right.
flabbergasting to them that, like, there should ever even be a discussion about who chooses what we get to do with our bodies. Like,
Yes.
we have the kind of, and it's not the flabbergasting of, like, where they brush it
Right.
off, right? They still understand that it's there and it's real, but it's the kind of flabbergast of, like they're with us of, like, why the fuck is this even like, what?
It's
Like,
fucked up, right?
ugh,
Like
it's fucked up.
yes.
Yeah. So I just feel like our both, like, I think we're both very, you know,
Well, and
like, I think both of our partners would do very well in these worlds.
we'll talk about it in the spoiler section, but like I think I've told you which character I think David is, and I kind of think your partner
I
Jeff.
don't remember,
We'll talk about.
so I'm
I
excited.
think your partner Jeff is in my opinion. I think they're both the same character.
Oh, that's
But I can't
hilarious.
because
That's so
that
funny.
character it doesn't come up in this book.
Oh, wait, we never talked about the
We
mercenary.
did never talk about the mercenary. I will say,
Okay, well, real
yeah,
quick.
real quick, because like she doesn't come into super play later.
Well,
It is important.
no, okay, but it's more if we're going into this whole, like, it's really cool how she adds these certain
Yeah.
characters. This badass mercenary, right? And again, I'm sure, listener, when you were reading it, you like, okay, it's this badass mercenary, very scary, blah, blah, blah. It's a woman. It's a woman. A mountain of a woman.
Do you know who I always picture when I think of this mercenary?
I feel like I do, but say it.
The actress who plays Lady Sif in the Thor movies.
Oh my God. I picture a goblin version of that. Don't know why. Can't tell you why.
Because she is a human.
I know. She's 100% a human. For some reason, I picture her green with pointy ears. I
Amazing.
can't. I have no. It's like a She-Hulk almost in my head.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's another little gift from Mama Mass of just it's a mountain of a woman. I mean, I think it being a woman is probably why Farrah ends up feeling comfortable to go over and talk to her. But it's just and, like, we actually get a lot of history from the mercenary, right? Like, she tells us and in the sense of, like, we get history, but we also get this kind of, like we get a little bit of, like, newsflash, like, so things are getting worse. More monsters are coming.
Yep.
Um, she even kind of, like, describes that, like, certain monsters that we have not heard about yet. We also kind of learn that there's no army for the humans,
Yeah.
right? There's no standing army because, there's been no need as they kind of say, and people are poor and blah, blah, but it's like these mercenaries are very popular because the rich will hire which kind of go along with this whole idea of when they talk about how rich people will grow like some of the last ash trees are in rich people's gardens. Like we're very much and probably for many of us out there, this sounds very familiar, right? The 1% kind of has everything. They're safe. They're
Well,
fine.
quick anecdote. I live in LA, and for those listening, when we release this, or remember, we're still experiencing these horrible fires going on. And there were literally rich people in like Bel Air and Beverly Hills who hired private fire trucks to literally just like the fires weren't near them or that near
Just
them,
protect them in
just
case.
in case. Like that is a very real thing that absolutely comes up later in the series too. Like you're so right. Like that actually is a really important part that establishes a lot of it's the groundwork for a lot that comes later.
Yeah, just like we're this is very much a world where, money controls everything, which sounds very familiar, right? Like only the rich people get protected, even though they're the ones who probably have walls around their homes and probably have all of this stuff. But like that's how this mercenary is making her living, right? Of that, like, and I think the whole idea of there being no standing army is like a really fascinating thing to really think about as well, because it's just like people are being picked
Yeah.
off. People by the border
Yeah.
are getting picked off.
Yeah. Sound familiar?
But no, it's just it's also just a very interesting like the people by the border are getting the worst of everything, which like in my mind feels very much like I don't know, my brain goes to like climate change in the sense where it's like the poorest people are the ones that are going to be affected first, right? Like their houses are going to go underwater first and no one's going to help them.
Yeah.
Their Flint has not had clean water for couldn't tell you how long. But it's just it's a very interesting it kind of goes back into what Ariel has brought up before and just sort of the things of just like she really pulls from a lot of unfortunately the reason why some of this feels extra grounded for us is that this is recognizable to us. This is like we know this corruption, we know this world, but it's also fucking awesome that the mercenaries this big ass lady. Like it's just really fucking cool to me. Like as someone who has always been obsessed with like the female soldier, very specifically like Lord of the Rings style female soldier, like I just this I'd never gotten to read that in a book before.
Yeah.
And so this mercenary, whether we see her again or not, to me has always been a big deal because it calls out to that little little girl, little baby Corinne, who would have loved to seen characters like this when she was younger. So I love the mercenary. There's also just a lot of little things of like seeing Feyre, like she Feyre appreciating the grotesque because
Yeah.
she shows her scar, she shows the stuff, the like really weird wound that's kind of coming up her leg, and Farah appreciating all the colors and how like she even says like it would have been beautiful if it wasn't killing her. And I just think this is another little insight into Farah of like she has this weird ability of like really appreciating the grotesque, what many people would view as grotesque or scary or dark.
No, I love that, and I think again, it's just such good character establishment. I mean, personally, it's one of the reasons I relate to her a lot, because like that's my thing too. Is like that's my type of work that I do, and so we love Feyre. So after she meets with the sells the pelts to the mercenary, gets a good chunk of money. The mercenary overpays her because
Yeah.
she's a queen. They go home.
Yeah.
They eat
Nesta chops more wood.
Nesta chops more wood. I think they eat, and then the chapter
Dun
ends
dun
with an
dun.
enormous growling shape in their doorway, and we'll find out what that shape is next
Yep.
week. So before we
Yep.
go into the spoiler section, next week's homework is we're going to be going through chapters 4 through 6. So read that ahead and
Mhm.
we will talk about that. So to the readers who have not read further than chapter 3, we bid you
Yep.
adieu.
We bid
Um,
you adieu. We, you're welcome and we're
you're
sorry.
welcome. We're sorry. And this is your official warning. We are now doing spoilers. Maybe we'll put a bumper here. Not sure. Um,
Not sure.
you'll find if you'll be seeing it if right here if there is. So
So, bye-bye. Enjoy the next couple chapters.
yeah,
We love you. We appreciate you for being here. And yeah, you're welcome and we're sorry.
welcome to our crazy little family that we're
Mhm.
hopefully creating.
Welcome to the cult.
Welcome to the cult.